et giga forave. Iku bloi po rusula rusio, holaka holala, alago
Howdy, welcome back to Film and. I'm Dan, your host. Happy to be back, and it is a cold, peaceful night here in Burlington, Vermont. Seems we got a dusting of snow this afternoon, and it might be here to stay for a bit. I don't know, but as always, season 5 of Film and, sponsored by 4 Seasons. And if you get that joke, you must be a fan of the YouTube channel, and we appreciate your support. But yeah, you know, it's pretty cold here in the Film and offices today. I'm not sure if they've turned off the heat, but we're getting to the end of the semester. And I am here to say that you're currently listening to the season finale of season 5 of Film and. This is the last episode I will be recording until the spring semester, when we will get into season 6 with the Andes and way more fun episode concepts. And it is kind of sad. It's a bittersweet ending because, you know, there's 2 big concepts, ideas that I had to do this semester that I just did not have time for. But here we are, the season finale. And, you know, I was looking back at the season trying to think, how can I sum this up? How can I sum up the end of the 2021 season, essentially, you know? And I was looking back, and, you know, we've talked about a lot of films where I want to highlight things that I personally think are really special additions to just the tapestry of film history in general. So I thought, to end off the season, I might talk about some of the films that not just I think impacted the world of film in general throughout history, but ones that impacted me. Ones that I just personally liked, you know? Call it a year-end list, I guess. But the thing is, I'm not talking about movies from 2021. I'm actually talking about, well, the name of this episode, Dan's Film Discovery 2021. I want to highlight 12 of my favorite movies that I've had the pleasure to see this year, that I discovered in 2021 that you may not know about. And this kind of comes in, you know, in the very similar narrative theme that I've been going with Film and, the obscure genre starter pack, the deep picks of stop-motion animation. I want to be able to discover movies that feel lost or obscure or, you know, something the mainstream might not know about, you know? Because it's so fun to just dig your hands into the ridiculous variety of everything. And these are 12 films that I think were just really cool. They were very cool films that I liked quite a bit. And I do have them ranked from 12 to 1, but these are all good. They're all good movies. We're not talking Halloween 79 with 12 movies that some are not great and some are good. These are all of my favorites, and I kind of have them ranked in level of not just personal enjoyment, but also kind of mixed with how would I recommend these to you? How much would I recommend these movies to you? And that's kind of the order they're in. So for the first half, I think I'm going to try and get through the first 6, which I won't delve into as much, I guess, for time-saving purposes. And then after, we'll take a quick PSA break, and then we'll move on to the final 4 films. So, I mean, let's not delay the inevitable. Let's get into it. Number 12. We are talking about the 2003 Japanese film Godzilla, Tokyo SOS. And for a little bit of context on how I found this film, and this is honestly the film for me that fits least into this list, because this is not 2021 Discovery. This is in fact 2021 Rediscovery. While I was prepping for Godzilla vs. Kong, the big monster film that came out back in March, I decided to watch as many Godzilla movies as I could. And I was unable to get through all of them. There were two that I missed, and they're sadly the two that I wanted to see most because I was working through like a rankings list. And the number one and the number two films, Shin Godzilla, the 2016 one, and the original Godzilla, were the two I wasn't able to see. So I was like, I surfed through all of these really bad Godzilla movies and all of these pretty okay Godzilla movies, and I didn't even get to the great Godzilla movies until Godzilla vs. Kong came out. And I was like, okay, whatever, I'll get to it another day. But I realized that some of these movies, for some reason, were coming back to me. And I was like, wait. I've seen these before. And I was reminded of when I was like 9 or 10 years old, maybe 11, and Hulu was just coming out. And if people don't remember early Hulu, this is kind of a really interesting time for streaming services because Hulu was it was a bit more of like the newcomer. It was a bit more adventurous and just kind of different, off the beaten path, and doing some fun things with the actual like physicality of the website and how they presented their content, their media. I mean, I remember on April Fool's, they completely redesigned the website to look like it was 1995 with fun 1995 graphics, and they were only showing banners for recently released, air quotes, X-Files episodes. And it was so funny. I loved it. And it's that kind of stuff you kind of lose these days with streaming services. So essentially, there was this thing that Hulu used to do called Hulu for the holidays. And they might still do it now, but they've just made it for the holidays. But back in the day, it was like the first Christmas that we had gotten Hulu, that my parents were like, hey, let's get Hulu for our new computer or whatever. We'll have it, we can watch stuff. And essentially, one sec. Hello? Hey. Someone just looked in the window. Hi, I'm recording. Oh. Anyways, and essentially what they did was, instead of playing actual Christmas movies, actual holiday movies, Hulu for the holidays was a collection of every Godzilla movie. And they had it like advertised as Hulu for the holidays. Watch Godzilla destroy Tokyo over and over again for 50 years. And I just thought it was so funny. And I watched so many. I must have watched like 12 Godzilla movies just on a like 10-pound laptop down in our basement. And I had so much fun with it. And rewatching all these movies, I was like, oh my goodness, I remember these. And my uncle saw that I was watching them and got me a DVD. Well, he got me two. He got me the original Godzilla, and then he got me Godzilla Tokyo SOS. You know, he had studied abroad in Japan for a couple years, and he remembered watching Tokyo SOS 2003 while he was there. It had come out, and he got me a copy. And I remember being like, oh, it's pretty fun. This is good. Oh, cool, whatever. And I kind of moved on. And then I rewatched it this spring, and it's great. It truly is one of the best Godzilla movies out there. I love it. It harkens back to like the original Honda era Godzilla films so well. And it looks cool. It's fun. I cannot recommend it enough. So this is the first one I'm talking about. And I just realized I spent way too much time ranting on that because I have 11 more movies to talk about. So we're going to see how this goes. I'm going to move on. Here we go. Next up, I'm going to go quicker if I can. Number 11, The Thundering Mantis. 1980 film with the tagline Mad, Bad, and Insane. Essentially, this is a Kung Fu movie, martial arts. Overall, I was kind of like whatever on it. It was an okay one. But I think this review that I have from Carlo V on Letterboxd perfectly describes this film. Most of this movie is pretty standard, but enjoyable kung fu romp that doesn't really deviate from the template of something like Drunken Master. The difference here is that it stars Leung Kar-yan, who, for being an untrained martial artist, has an amazing form and is a generally fun and energetic screen presence. But then what happens in the end isn't just raising the stakes and going all out, like only Hong Kong cinema can do, but Leung is driven to a state that has him revert to primal animal instincts, to the point where the entire final fight turns into basically performance art. I'm going to skip over some of this review because I don't want to spoil it for you. I'm still picking up my jaw. Minute 1 through 80 are a soft 4, but those last 10 minutes are a hard 5 out of 5. And I'm giving it that because this stuff tops even Jackie Chan's performance in Legend of Drunken Master. And boy, do I have to agree with that. Amazing, amazing ending. So moving on from Thundering Mantis, we have 1971 film, the number 10 slot, The Cat O' Nine Tails, which is actually an early Dario Argento film. This is like one of his second or third films, and it's before Deep Red, which is kind of where he really starts to get a lot of international critical reception, 1975. So it's a couple years right before it. 1971, great film, beautifully shot and cast, as most Argento films are, and overall just a fun kind of psychological thriller. English Italian language film with some cool intrigue. I can't recommend it enough if you're a fan of Argento, Italian horror, suspense in general. This is a great early example of that. This is like one of the forerunning films. Okay, we're going quickly. We're getting through these. Next up, number 9, we have A Civil Action, 1998 film by Steven Zaillian. Which, that name seems familiar. Yes, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. We've just talked about some of his work. But yeah, just a great example of a film that honestly got the shortest end of the stick. Because the thing was, it was expecting, with a $75 million budget, it was expecting to do much better than the studio ended up realizing it would. Because even with this cast, you have an amazing cast showing up for this movie. John Travolta in the lead, Robert Duvall, you have James Gandolfini, John Lithgow, William H. Macy, Tony Shalhoub, Kathleen Quinlan. A lot of heavy hitter names, especially in the 90s as well. I mean, a lot of actors and actresses, kind of at their peak of relevance almost. One of the last, I think, great performances by Travolta in a movie as well. I mean, he really does have a great performance here. But what ended up happening is that it only had a domestic gross of $56 million against its $75 million budget. And that honestly was mostly in part to the films that came out almost around the exact same time that turned into giant hits. Now, we're talking Shakespeare in Love, which would win Best Picture, The Prince of Egypt, Star Trek Insurrection, You've Got Mail, and Patch Adams, all coming out at the same time, and A Civil Action gets pushed to the wayside because the general person can only see so many movies in a month, So it's really too bad that this movie kind of got lost in the fray in a sense. And what's funny is going back to Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times giving this movie a 3.5 out of 4. And he wrote, Civil Action is like John Grisham for grown-ups. And I'm not sure if that's like a dig on John Grisham or if it's more just a compliment to A Civil Action. So watch it if you want to catch a really great John Travolta performance and just a really exciting kind of court case drama. Surprisingly engaging for how cliched some of those courthouse dramas now feel. Next up, number 8, 1978 Japanese film Spiderman, the movie. Yes, we are talking about the seminal work of Spider-Man the movie, this Japanese rendition of Spider-Man and his battle against the Iron Cross Army, who are sabotaging oil tankers with the help of their monster, the Sea Devil, a semi-mechanical anthropomorphic swordfish with an ability to shoot torpedoes from its mouth. This thing is a classic. And I cannot recommend it enough. It is actually one of my favorite pieces of Spider-Man media out there. It is fun. It is campy in all the right places. It's just such a great romp in the idea of just making almost like fan fiction for Spider-Man. And it's just so fun and lighthearted, and it just does everything right. It does a lot of justice, I mean, at least for me, to the kind of lighthearted nature of Spider-Man as a hero in general. So check it out. Please do. I think it's free somewhere. Next up, number 7, we have the 1977 documentary Roots, Rock, Reggae, Inside the Jamaican Music Scene. This is another one of those films that I found, like in the weirdest way. I was driving home, I think from band practice this summer. I'm in a band. And I was driving home from band practice, And this song came on the radio. And I was like, oh, what a cool song. Oh my God. I Shazammed it. And I realized it was from a reggae artist. And I looked him up and I started researching him. And, I've never been much into reggae music. It's not really my jam. But just like reading up on him and his story and his experience was so fascinating that I had to kind of look into what the Jamaican reggae scene was back in the 70s. It was really cool. And then randomly I realized I was doing more research, kind of just for fun at this point. And I saw that he was involved in this documentary. I wish I could remember his name at this point. I completely forget his name. But essentially, he was part of this Roots Rock Reggae, this 77 documentary that was actually part of a series of documentaries that I think ended up being shown on PBS in the 80s. And it's, I think, free on YouTube, and I watched it, and it's a really cool watch because it's such a personal and intimate look at what the music industry in Jamaica was, Because I feel like for us, getting sort of the import of reggae music and the reggae wave that hit America, I think it's easy to forget the actual roots of reggae, like in Jamaica, and what it meant for them and why they were making this music and how it kind of shaped the culture at the time when it was hitting its true peak of relevance. So I think it just really captures the moment of what reggae was for Jamaica and its people. And I would totally watch it, find it, it's great. Moving on, number 6. We're talking about the 1920 film Neighbors, co-written, co-directed by, and starring Buster Keaton. The classic Buster Keaton. This is a film I was lucky enough to watch with Steve, who you might know from announcing Best Supporting Actress at the second annual Andies. He showed this to me the same day we watched The Truman Show. It's the first time I watched that this spring. And yeah, great movie. If you want to catch Buster Keaton at one of his funniest, most creatively visual states, look no further than the 1920 short film Neighbors. And then finally, before the break, number 5, Police Story, 1985 film, directed and starring Jackie Chan. And this is such a fun film, mostly for its well-known stunt coordination and all the things that Jackie Chan did to get this movie to exist. And let me just kind of read you, from Wikipedia, from the research, what I'm talking about when it comes to these stunts. The film contained many large-scale action scenes, including an opening sequence featuring a car chase through a shanty town, like down a hill, and then Chan dangling from a speeding double-decker bus before stopping it with his service revolver, and a climactic fight scene in a shopping mall. This final scene in the shopping mall earned the film the nickname Glass Story by the crew due to the huge number of panes of sugar glass that were broken. During a stunt in this last scene, in which Chan slides down a pole from several stories up, the light covering the pole had heated it considerably, resulting in Chan suffering second-degree burns, particularly to his hands, as well as a back injury and dislocation of his pelvis upon landing. Edward Tang, the screenwriter for this film and many others, said that he did not write this film the way normal Hollywood screenwriters work. Chan instructed Tang to structure the film around a list of props and locations, i.e. shopping mall, village, bus. In contrast to this production, most Hollywood films rely on the creativity of the screenwriters to create the plot elements of a film, which are then forwarded to the director for actual filming. So in an interview with Chan, he discussed a stunt of sliding down the pole covered with lights. Jackie Chan described his fear at the thought of performing the stunt. During the filming of Police Story, there was the added pressure of strict time restrictions, as the shopping mall had to be cleaned up and ready for business the following morning. So one of Chan's stuntmen actually gave him a hug and a Buddhist prayer paper, which he put in his trousers before finally performing the stunt. And in the double-decker bus scene, Jackie used a metal umbrella because a wooden one kept slipping when he tried to hang on to the bus. And oh my goodness, if this doesn't interest you to watch this film, I don't know what will, but it's a pretty exciting, fun story with Jackie Chan as just a very engaging lead. And this brings us to our quick PSA break, and I will be coming back with the final 4 movies that I've discovered in 2021.
Running late to class but still need that morning caffeine or hot breakfast to start your day out right? Download the Bite app by Sodexo and place your custom order for fast, easy pickup at Zyme. Open 8:30 a.m. to 3 o'clock p.m. Mondays through Fridays.
Okay, welcome back to Film and. I'm gonna go as quick as I can with these, which honestly, these are some pretty amazing film experiences I've had, not just considering them, researching them, getting to know them, but also just the film watching experience in general. And, you know, when it comes to actually watching films, I can look no further for the film that makes my number 4 slot on this list, and that is the 2020 film Money Has 4 Legs. And this is actually film from Myanmar. And I was lucky enough to watch it at the VTIF, Vermont International Film Festival, with my class. All senior film professor took us to watch this film. And afterwards was a Q&A with the director. And this film was brought to light, and VTIF ended up picking it up because of what the story behind it, what they had heard. The director worked with a primary screenwriter in Myanmar before eventually the screenwriter was arrested and detained, and the director had to flee the country. So when he was Skyping us for the Q&A, he was in hiding in Paris, as we are allowed to say. We are allowed to say that he was in Paris 2-3 months ago. I don't think there have been any updates, and if there are, I don't think I could say it on the radio waves. But he Skyped in with us from Paris at the time to talk to us about his film, and it was really cool to see him talk about what it was like making this film, because the censorship in Myanmar has been very restrictive, and especially the opening scene. And this is a comedy film, a self-referential comedy film about filmmaking. You know, a director struggling to get their film made in Myanmar. The opening scene starts at a censor's office with a comedic take on a censorship officer kind of just critiquing the film like, oh, it's too much sex and smoking and swearing, get rid of all of it. And boy, the censorship board didn't like that. But just the bravery, I think, that comes with this. And also, you know, just hearing the director talk almost so casually about, you know, his exile from the country, him not being able to go home, and him just working to make a film using all of his resources, costing him so much to just tell a narrative about his nation. It's amazing. It was an amazing film watching experience, and just getting that live interview afterwards was all the better. So sadly, I can't say you can see this anywhere, but if you ever see Money Has 4 Legs, if you hear about it anywhere, which it has been shown, you know, Far East Film Festival and a couple other things. I mean, this film was only picked up by a single festival, I believe in Hong Kong, and that was the only festival where internationally other people could find it. He doesn't even have, I think, the original copies, the actual footage files. They're locked away in a safe in Myanmar. I don't think he even has them. We just have like this cut of the movie. But yeah, it was able to reach to us here in Burlington, and it was just really, well, inspirational. So if you ever see it showing up somewhere, find it and watch it. It's a pretty fun movie. Number 3, the 1981 film Blowout. Brian De Palma, prolific, coming out with this really cool film, which is very much based on the Blow Up with the Antonioni 1966 film. Basically replaced the medium of photography with the medium of audio recording, which ends up capturing a murder that occurs on a bridge in Philadelphia. The entire film takes place in Philadelphia. And this is just a really great example of actually an early John Travolta performance. He stars in this one too, 1981, coming fresh off of Saturday Night Fever and Grease. Great cast, including Nancy Allen and John Lithgow. And there's a lot of just interesting stories that come out of this film. Almost all of the film was shot at night. Almost 70% of the film being shot at night, actually. There's explanations as to why that was done the way it is. And it's kind of this idea of not diffusing and not flashing as much with the visuals. It seems very unnecessary because you're really focusing more on the audio. You know, you're not looking at these daytime eye-catching shots. You're more interior, nighttime, and you're kind of more listening to this movie than watching it, which is a really cool technique that I don't think enough movies use. But yeah, there's just some really interesting stories. My favorite one being that they shot a bunch of footage during the Liberty Parade, which kind of coincides with the climax of the film. And two of the reels of footage from that shoot were stolen and never recovered. So they had to be reshot with insurance money at a cost of $750,000. And because the original cinematographer was not available, someone had to come in and lensed the reshot sequences. And that's just crazy. It's the little things like that where you would never know that, but you read about it, and it's just insane to think, oh, some person just came in, stole those two reels of footage, and De Palma had to be like, well, I guess I just have to take my $750,000 and reshoot it. It's really just interesting. Totally recommend it. Number 2, we are reaching the end here, and this is a short one. I will not spend too much time on it, but we are talking about the 1973 American animated short film, Frank Film, directed by Frank Morris. And this was actually a suggestion by a friend of mine, Zane, who recommended, knowing the themes of my own senior film, hey, check it out, you might be interested in it. And he was right. This is one of the best things I have seen all semester. Zane, thank you for recommending it. This was just an amazing, immersive, experimental film experience. And not only that, animated. Essentially, it is a compilation of images that co-creator Frank Morris had collected from magazines interwoven with two narrations over each other, talking at the same time, competing for your attention. And it is so disarming, yet so compelling, because you can listen to both. You can go between a story or something else, and essentially what it is, it's a mostly linear autobiography of his life. And the other one is just him stating words that either have to do with the images, the story that the first voice is relating, or just neither. Just saying words, I guess, to distract you. I don't know. It's such a chaotic visual thing as well. And what's insane is that this movie, which wasn't exactly a big production, it was for him, and it also was for the person he shot it with, Caroline Morris, his wife, I believe. This was kind of a personal project of his. It ended up winning the Academy Award for Best Short Subject Animated Film in 1974. And it's pretty cool. It's pretty freaking amazing. One critic dubbed it as a 9-minute evocation of America's exhilarating everythingness. And I honestly feel that that is right on the nose. I think it's truly an amazing film. And that brings us to number 1, our final film, the 1995 Jim Jarmusch film, Dead Man. This is 10 years now since the first on-screen role of Johnny Depp. And he plays the leading man in this Jim Jarmusch film, who had since established himself as a prolific indie director through the 1980s. And I watched this just on a whim one night back in June. And the amount of parallels I found to my own aesthetic, to my own love of cinema, to pretty much everything. Even the fact that he gets in a canoe at the end, and I was currently writing a film where there's a canoe trip. I saw so many parallels that I couldn't help but just be enthralled for the entirety of its runtime. I mean, this essentially runs as a psychedelic Western, completely shot in black and white, and with scant atmospheric compositions by Neil Young. Neil Young with just an electric guitar and a microphone. That's pretty much it. And the thing is, for the fact of this being such an indie film, it's got an amazing cast. Johnny Depp is the lead, but Crispin Glover, John Hurt, Robert Mitchum in one of his last roles, Iggy Pop, which, obviously a big collaborator, Iggy Pop with Jim Jarmusch, and also Alfred Molina and Billy Bob Thornton. I mean, this is one of my favorite films of all time. It has become one of my favorite films of all time. It is beautiful. It is haunting. It's such an amazing encapsulation of everything the American West wasn't shown to you in classic Western films. It feels in so many ways like a transcendent experience, which is what a lot of my favorite films do for me, you know? I mean, I just watched 2001: A Space Odyssey in my Film Topics, A Cinematic Space Odyssey class on Monday, and I was brought back to the first time I had watched that film, and it was a transcendent experience. And it's these kind of films that just leave so much breath for you to consider what the film itself is exploring, and yet a film like Dead Man continues to have that story, that plot line, continue and be engaging without just sitting there giving you weird visuals and saying, oh, you do the rest. You know, everything is so meticulous. And I was watching an interview with Jim Jarmusch talking about this film. And he said how he had taken a couple years off from filmmaking because he couldn't think of a concept. He couldn't think of a follow-up to his past movie that really felt right to him, that he could really sink his teeth into. And then this is when he found this one. And you know, it's kind of a postmodern Western, but it's been compared a lot to Cormac McCarthy's novel Blood Meridian, which also kind of works in this sort of anti-Western genre. But yeah, it's a really amazing film. That's all I can say. It is stunningly beautiful, intense, and atmospheric again. And honestly, having the visual acting, the physical acting of Johnny Depp in this role is really, really cool. You know, he plays such a passive protagonist, but he brings so much life to his character through very just subtle acting choices, which is something only a film like this is able to capture the nuance of. So that is the film I recommend the most that I discovered in the year 2021. And that, well, brings us to the end of this episode, which has run a little long because I really wanted to talk about all of these. I wish I had gotten it down to 10. That would have probably shaved it up a bit. Probably talked a lot about Tokyo SOS and early Hulu, but whatever. Despite all that, if you're here at the end, thank you. Thank you for listening, as always. I'll put all these movies up on the Film and Letterboxd list under my my Letterboxd account, DA_N. All the movies we talk about show up there, and if you're interested in whatever movies we talked about on the first 4 seasons of Film and, those show up on Cranberry 18's Film and list. If you're listening on the YouTube version, linked below, CRAND Berry 18. You know, it's been a really nice season to be able to dive into these films and just talk about cinema that I love on a more extended basis, you know, being able to delve in for a half an hour. That it always goes by so quickly, but you get to say a lot. And I do really appreciate that so much. You know, I'm not sure when we're coming back with season 6, but whatever we come back with, I will be excited to bring it back. You know, it'll be my last season of Film and here at the Champlain Wave. And the Champlain Wave offices will be kind of empty, you know, but I can't wait for it. I can't wait to continue to talk about film and to just share my thoughts. It's a fun thing to do, especially with the Champlain Wave supporting me all the way. So as I sign off for the final time this season, I hope you have a lovely holiday. There might be some Film Asterisk content coming out within the next month if I can find time for it. You never know what I'm able to pull together. It completely depends on who's around, if I'm even around. But again, thank you so much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed Season 5 of Film and. Yeah, it's been a time. Can't believe I found time for it. Geez, that Fast and Furious tier list, that took forever. You guys don't even know how long that took. That took weeks. It took months. It took so much days of scripting. Now I'm just remembering on how hard it was to get all this out, but worth it. It was worth it because it's fun. Yeah. So you will hear from me at some point in the future. Thank you so much for listening, as always, and have a great rest of your year. Happy holidays, everyone. Goodbye.